Hello and welcome. This is Chris Chilcots with Harper Harrison, and today I'm joined very generously by Jesse Weber, who's the principal at PlaceMKR in Austin. How are you doing today, Jesse?
Doing really well, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, very, very good, thank you. I'm thrilled to have you on. I know we've spoken a couple of times, but never really had the opportunity to dive into kind of your background and where you came from. So I'm really excited to learn a bit more because I know you've had a fantastic career. And without further ado, and to dive straight on in, if that's okay, um, how did you get into the real estate sector to start with, Jesse?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Chris. I started prior to a real estate career. I had a couple different gigs in the sales industry. One at Nike on the West Coast, and then also at ADP, which is a small business services company. And through that process, I ended up having a client that was in the boutique commercial real estate world in Connecticut. And one thing led to the other, and I ended up in a brokerage capacity. Uh, in Connecticut at a boutique shop that led to a move to a global brokerage firm. And then serendipitously had the opportunity to move to Austin, Texas in 2014 to open up the office for that global brokerage firm. At which time, learned the Austin market, continued to do brokerage both for tenant and landlord clients, and then had the opportunity with an old partner of mine from the Northeast to start PlaceMKR, the platform that it is today, in 2018. And the origination of that firm was built around the opportunity zones, which were put into play in 2017. And we set out in 2018 to really attack them in a way that other developers and investors hadn't been doing in Austin. And, that's transitioned into a business 3 years later that we're continuing to build, continuing to deliver. The first ground up project, which is 1141 Shady Lane, actually delivers this month. And what's unique about that asset is it's the first opportunity zone office ground up project in the state of Texas that we're aware of.
That's fantastic. It's definitely exciting. It's nice to be at the forefront and kind of really making waves. And I know PlaceMKR um, doing some really great things at the moment and kind of pushing the boundaries of what's thought of possible in these zones. It's nice to see people making the most of it and being
Yeah.
able to give back to the communities in those ways. Um, and as you said, obviously you started out in kind of a couple of sales positions before jumping into the real estate world. In your opinion, what makes kind of the real estate, I suppose, sector and industry so unique to be a part of and to work in?
What I found initially that was interesting to me was that from my prior sales capacities, I was often reaching out to clientele that didn't really want to talk about what I had to say. Not so much at Nike, but certainly at ADP. And then, getting into a brokerage capacity, it felt like I could talk to anybody about real estate. And they always either had a personal anecdote that they wanted to share, or on the commercial side, they were interested to either talk about the office space that they occupied or the new apartment project that was going up around the corner. It's an omnipresent concept that everyone has a touch point to. And what I found is, it's something that can be shared across all masses. And I'm never really in a crowd that doesn't want to talk about it in some capacity, whether it's, flipping a house, or, hey, what's going on with that new mixed use project coming into BK.
No, it's certainly all encompassing in that sense. And as you're right, it touches everyone's lives, whether they truly understand and appreciate in ways or not. But it's definitely has a huge impact on our day-to-day lives. And as you say, it's fantastic just to be able to talk to people about it as well. More often than not, it's a fairly social group of people who work in real estate as well, which is always nice. Um, but looking back now, obviously you've made a couple of fairly big moves over your career, both geographically across the US and also within the sector you work in and specializing in, kind of into obviously being principal now with PlaceMKR. Looking back to the start of your career, whether you want to call that kind of sales initially or kind of the start of your real estate career, what advice would you give yourself, kind of your younger self, knowing what you do now and kind of having the experiences that you do now?
Yeah, so when I got into brokerage, it was more of a serendipitous leap where I knew the company, I knew the people, and I was looking for a career change at the moment in time. This was at the end of 2008, and I was in the New York Metro, and I did not quite understand the impact that everything that was happening in the financial markets around me would have on the real estate industry. So coming into 2009, my first full year in commercial real estate on the brokerage side, I couldn't understand how anyone could make money in this business. And I kind of put some shekels together and made a couple deals, and then I started to kind of get on a path of, okay, this is how you do it, and this is where the blue ocean is, as I like to say. And what I would tell my younger self is that there's really not a position that you need to step into. If the career path is to get into real estate development and construction, there's no real straightforward path. It's not like, hey, get the associate role here, become the managing director here, become a VP here, and now you're a principal. It's really, you can get in through the brokerage door, as I did. You can get in through the property management door, as I've seen other people do. I know some architects in Austin that are really transitioning the business to development and come from the design side. You could be in project management and turn the corner into development. There's a really prolific developer ownership group in Austin, and the background there is it was a biotech entrepreneur that turned a medical device business into a booming real estate business. So what I would tell my younger self is don't think that there's a clear path, and if your path kind of diverts for a minute, you can get back to it. And then the overarching, I think, success story for anybody that starts their own company is just that day that they decide to start their company, and making that choice and taking that leap is the differentiator between those that have a company and those that don't.
No, absolutely. I really like that, and you've headed off my next question wonderfully. I was going to ask. Well, I'll still ask the question just to see if there's any other ideas coming out of your background there. But if you're talking to someone who's either thinking about jumping into the industry and kind of starting a career in real estate, whether that's construction, development, or elsewhere, or is kind of at the early stages in the ladder and looking at or thinking about their future, what advice would you be giving them, or what do you think that you could help them with and kind of advise them on kind of at that stage looking forwards at the industry and trying to work out if it's for them, where do they want to be?
Yeah, so over the years in Austin, we've spent time working with the University of Texas at Austin in the real estate program in terms of, speaking to graduating students, talking about opportunities. We've hired many as interns. And one of the key components to the industry is I find that there's a massive amount of supply in terms of talent that want to get into the business. And it's really challenging to get that first foot in the door, especially in a market like Austin, Texas, especially in the last, 5 to 10 years as it's, become boomtown. There is a lot of people not only in Austin, but trying to get into Austin from across the country. And getting that initial foot in the door is the biggest challenge. And my recommendation would be figure out a way to get into the industry. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be that development associate role that gets you a foot in the door in the development business. Getting experience at a project management company, getting experience in a brokerage capacity, any of those other capacities that start to build your commercial real estate, one, network, two, experience, and being able to come to someone like me and say, hey, here's my skill set that I've honed. Each of the skills that you learn in each of those businesses can be applicable depending on the role. And for instance, we're looking to hire a development associate role today, and we're looking at people that are coming from the brokerage background. We're looking at people that have come from the development background. We're talking to people that are coming from the engineering background. And all of them bring a different set of skills, but are all applicable in the right way. And what we find is we're looking for a type of person more than we're looking for specific experience. And that type of person starts with a self-starter mentality. And what I mean by that is, the business is moving so quickly and it's so fungible that management in a way that is typical in an executive world really isn't there, at least at our company. At larger shops, I'm sure there could be more one-to-one management, but for us, we're looking for people that can, think on their feet, are resourceful, are going to be doing things, as hurdles are being thrown, figuring out the solutions on the fly, and us trusting them to make those decisions.
No, so I really like that, and I like the kind of interlinking web of real estate as a wider industry. And as you say, it can be quite easy sometimes, I think, to look at the options in front of you and kind of the possibilities in the sector and get a little bit overwhelmed and not necessarily see the connecting dots, and seeing as you say, they're very transferable skills throughout kind of all the different aspects of the industry. And I think it's interesting to hear as well, kind of as you're saying, you're looking at kind of hiring someone into this development associate job title position, but you're very open to considering and kind of looking at the skill sets people bring to the table from different backgrounds, not necessarily from the very niche vertical kind of that might lead into it logically, but being able to see the bigger picture and yeah, transfer skill sets across disciplines. That's really
I've
good.
always felt that the skill sets, the natural born leader, the natural born self starter, independent thinker, you can't necessarily create those skills, but we can teach real estate. So finding that person that we feel like has some type of skill set that's transferable, we can teach them the context, but we can't necessarily create somebody that is going to be uber helpful to the business.
No, absolutely. I think it's easy to teach, as you say, technical skills. It's much harder to change someone's behaviors and kind of who they are and how they think and how they problem solve. I really like that. It's a really good perspective, and yeah, really like that. Um, Obviously, real estate has had a pretty good last year, despite the challenges we've seen in the wider economy. Some sectors better than others, but obviously Texas in particular has had a huge amount of I think media attention on it due to kind of companies relocating in and kind of the developments and construction projects that are kicking off. But obviously, not everything is going to be rosy and full steam ahead forever. What challenges do you think this sector, kind of within real estate, is going to face in the coming years?
Really good question. I mean, the clear and present concern for everybody right now is office space and what happens there. And you can really sit on either side of the fence and make a really passionate argument that maybe I'd buy into, maybe I wouldn't. My own perception on what will happen with office space is, and I've heard some really smart people share their insights. There's a lot of content that's out in the media today about it, especially recently. There's announcements from big investment. But I think there's a couple key components that will have people going back to the office. One is this fear of missing out, as people have shared, which is you're the one person that's on the Zoom call and everybody else is in the office, and you want to be the one person on the Zoom call. So there's that element of it. Two, from a collaboration standpoint, these Zoom calls are great, but there's no better way than to be in a room together. And we see this with the development process when we're dealing with our architecture teams and our design and civil teams. And we'll get on a Zoom call and there'll be 22 people on a Zoom call. And as you well know, one person can speak efficiently. So it's all very inefficient, in terms of getting a large collaborative group together. And then, the last piece there is, Sam Zell, I think, said something along the lines of, everyone will be on Zoom calls until a sales guy realizes he has a better chance of selling the deal when he's in front of somebody, and then everybody will be in front of somebody. And I tend to believe that, and you can. It's a great intro like this, you and I, Chris. But I look forward to the day we can share a beer and be together, and that's a different experience. Humanity wise than just looking at each other, and we could be anywhere in the world.
No, I completely agree. I think they have their place time to time, but I agree. Kind of getting back to the breakfast, the lunches, and just the actual going out, sitting down, and having conversation with someone is going to be a very welcome change when we do get back to being comfortable with that.
And
Um,
add something to that. So that's on the off. piece. The other larger dynamic that I think is at play right now is the push-pull between urban and suburban.
Mm.
And, you read the news headlines and everybody is, moving to Montana, or they're moving to Texas, or they're moving to Florida. And, moving out of New York City, and New York City's going to die. And I just can't buy into any of that. I think that there'll be a change in dynamics, and there's probably some people with families that have moved out of the cities and found a really nice yard in a nice small town, and a nice community to be a part of. But I don't think that that solves the yearning for live, work, play, and entertainment, and museums and culture that a city affords. So I think while there's an immediate feeling like, okay, people are leaving the cities, I think that all kind of shifts back to the cities, or just kind of normalizes over the next 5 years.
No, so I agree with that one as well. I don't think it's a permanent shift by any means. I think it suits certain stages of your life without a shadow of a doubt. But I think the allure of cities will be there once the entire experience is back to being what it was pre-COVID. And probably to touch on both of those points, actually, so the office specific and kind of the wider sector and the trends we've been seeing this year. Is there anything, do you think, that we as a real estate sector and industry can do to help to either speed the recovery or help encourage people back into certain environments, or put fears to one side to bring people back into real estate in close environments?
Hmm. I think what may happen is you have this movement to the suburbs, and I think you're going to see an increase in mixed use developments percolating in the suburbs to kind of pull that's those city amenities to the suburbs. I don't think that quite solves the need, or the desires of the city, but I think it may be a temporary band-aid. In terms of what else we're looking for, in Austin, our methodology is path of progress. So we're staying in tertiary areas of the city, and what we're finding is, we're not necessarily going to the suburbs, but the horizontal growth is occurring in a more meaningful way than the vertical growth. And some of that has to do with land pricing, some of that has to do with exorbitant construction costs, which are making just any vertical components extremely expensive. So, we're looking at going outward, growth, and perhaps that helps to, solve this shift.
Absolutely. Interesting. I like that. It's a good perspective, I think, and it definitely help with some of the obviously space issues and comfort issues that we may have facing going forwards, unfortunately. Um, that is the kind of the end of really what I wanted to dig into to your perspectives on real estate, if that's okay. Thanks very much for humouring me and kind of running through that with me. I do have 5 quick questions I want to fire at you just to wrap things up here today.
Sure.
I've got 5 kind of topics or kind of areas. I just want to hear your either favorite thing or kind of the first thing that pops into your head as I ask the question, if that's okay. So to
Yeah.
jump on in, what's your favorite place outside of the US?
Outside of the U.S., I really had a good time in the Grecian Islands years ago, and Mykonos was one of the places that I remember really enjoying. I went there with my wife, along with an island of Capri in Italy. In both, I think we're driven by the island experience, but also the waters. I mean, that Mediterranean blue is just sensational.
You certainly can't top them. What's your favorite cuisine?
So my wife is Italian, and she is probably the best Italian cook in the state of Texas. I'll say, and she makes some pretty incredible chicken parmesan.
Fantastic stuff. Favorite sports team?
New England Patriots.
Best book or podcast you've come across recently?
How they built this is a great one. I've also been listening to the Bigger Pockets podcast, which they have quite a few episodes out there, and it's just good to get different people's perceptions of real estate. I've really dug into the accounting side of things, and they have really interesting subject specific experts on that, one way or another, again, talking about real estate as omnipresent. That's they kind of highlight that by bringing in people from all walks of life.
Fantastic stuff. Final one for the day. What's your favorite building globally? Ideally
Hmm.
something you haven't built.
That's funny. I was going to say 1141, but which I do think is probably the most interesting office building in Austin. But what I would say, holistically, and this is kind of a weird answer, but Fenway Park in Boston, and it's where the Red Sox play, and it's probably the first piece of architecture that I can remember as a 6-year-old boy. My grandfather taking me to a baseball game, and showing up, and you just see the green of the field, the green of the Green Monster, and I that probably gives me the best feeling. And it's not an office building, it's not an apartment building, it's not some sensational work of architecture, but to me, there's something meaningful about it.
No, that's fantastic. That's a really good answer, and yeah, I appreciate that. The best one's always going to be one of your own that you're pretty proud of. But no, fantastic. Thank you very much. I think that's all we have time for today, Jesse. I really appreciate the time. It's been fantastic getting to know you a little bit better, and yeah, really appreciate the time today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me, Chris. And any way I can help in the future, please don't be afraid to ask.
Thanks very much. Bye now.